Hi guys, today's tutorial is an updated question 2 on the language paper 1 and this is looking at the summer 2017 paper, The Tiredness of Rosabelle. I'm going to assume that you guys have read this, maybe you've done it in your mock exams, but if you haven't or you haven't had access to this paper, I will just, if you just pause the video here to have a read through of side 1. And then, again, if you can pause it now to have a look at the rest of the extract. Okay, so I can assume now that you've all had a read of it and you all get the gist of what's going on in this story. Okay, rather than sort of write out another full response, what I thought I'd do is be really focusing on a grade 5, what makes a grade 5, style paragraph, and that's what lots of you will be aiming for, making sure you get that grade 5 to move forward onto level 3 courses. And so what I wanted to do, rather than sort of here's a full mark response, here's what would be getting 5-6 marks and therefore would be at that grade 5. So, just sort of revisiting the question and recapping, reminding ourselves of what we need to do. It's the writer's use of language here, and there's some specificity here in terms of it's the bus journey home. Now, some students went a little bit awry in that they started exploring other elements and about Rosabelle herself, or they started getting evidence that was outside of the lines that you've been given. Always look really carefully to make sure that you're looking at the extract and that you're not sort of finding evidence from elsewhere in the source. It sounds a bit obvious, but in the heat of the exam, you can get a bit stressed, definitely, and make that as a bit of a silly mistake. As I've said before, my advice to students is to reject sentence forms. We know that could really does mean could, and it's entirely up to you. If you just want to look for language features, techniques, and don't want to do sentence forms, then to me that's spot on. Now, in previous videos, I've probably advised you to attempt 3 P points for this question. Looking from the summer, I think that maybe 2 really nicely developed P, or as those of you who are familiar with, P points, developed, where we point, evidence, explain, and then we explore and expand and evaluate, would be sufficient, because let's not forget, you're looking at 12 minutes, 15 minutes, you haven't got a huge amount of time. So as you're looking through the extract, you really have a look at your neon words, what's standing out to you, and remember that, as I say, 8 marks, you're only going to be able to talk about a few examples. Try and pick ones from the whole extract, but don't try and one of the big things students do is they sometimes are overly ambitious. So lots of students were talking about the sickening smell of warm humanity, but actually they were really struggling to say anything meaningful about it. Whereas if you were talking about fairy palaces or the opal and silver or the meaningless faces, actually there's lots to say there that you can access, whereas you're probably going to overcomplicate this, and the result might be that you don't quite get the meaning across to your examiner. So here's an example of 1 P point, or a developed P point, that I've sort of, here's one I made earlier, but what I'd just like to draw your attention to is how and why this would be getting, this is an example of something that would get 5 to 6 marks out of 8. So we've got as a point, what is the writer? And I think it's a great starting point, that what is the writer doing? Always start with the writer. The writer uses jewel and fairy imagery to portray Rosabelle's awe of the shops. And that's good. We've got some precise language, to show she's in amazement and she's got awe at what she can see. So we've got a clear point there. And then we've got some evidence, and we've got some writer's techniques, the metaphor of the shop, turning their dullness to opal and silver. And we've got our evidence here, reflects their captivating nature and their beauty. So there's a clear explanation of how that quote, how this bit of evidence conveys something about the shop. This is further conveyed by the contrast of light and dark imagery between dullness and opal and silver, which has connotations of glamour and decadence due to them being expensive materials. So we've got our point and evidence and explain, but what we're going to do is explore that and expand it. So exploring and expanding, really zooming in on particular words and expanding it, finding further evidence to back up what we're saying. And, you know, this idea of the connotations, really the images we get in our head, and sort of a more detailed explanation of the effect of that. So hopefully looking at this, people are thinking it's not brilliant. What does it do? It establishes something the writer's done. It gives an example. We've got some technique in there. We've got an explanation of the effect of that quote. We've got some extra evidence to back it up, and some more detailed and insightful ideas about what those quotes, what kind of connotations they have for us as readers. So I would be comfortable if a student had done a couple of good paragraphs like this, to be awarding that 5 out of 8 marks and be saying that would be around a grade 5. So hopefully you can now have a look at this question, go away and have a practice doing a couple of your own in the same style. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.